Do you look in the sky a lot?
I'm in the process of going to get fuel for my gas.
This is Time and Space, hosted by Mike Smith.
He's a moron.
I am just a figment of your imagination.
Buy that hat, you get a bowl of soup.
It looks good on you, though.
Oh! Take some of those balls and some of those and 5 of those teas. And hey, what are you taking a picture of, Wang? It's a parking lot.
This is the shack. I was thinking of the Love Shack.
That's
the Love Shack.
The
it is not the Love Shack when there are 3 men in it.
Right.
Ever. Not in Damascus, dude.
It's the shed.
That's not how we roll.
Don't get that wrong again.
Or you could refer to it as like a barn, like the hockey announcers do.
It's true.
Not this barn.
It is a bit of a barn.
Not
the,
this
the
barn.
Shed,
it's a shed.
It's a shed.
It is. It's a shed. I mean, it's got a tiller in it. What else
it
would
does.
it be? It's a shed. It's a shed
true.
or it's a barn. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Shacks would not have those. They might have funky little shack.
That was funny, too, because your timing was really good. It's just you said shack instead of shed, and I couldn't let it go.
Perfect.
It was perfect. You were like, live from the shack.
But I winched.
Like, no.
The shed.
I'm recording this, by the way.
Your editing magic on that.
This is a small clip that I'm just pre-recording into the...
All right, just tell me when I'm...
You can start whenever you want, man.
Good to go. Welcome back to timeandspaceus. What in the world was that? Are you... My goodness.
Right.
Faye, I think
I'm playing the mouth
hacking
organ.
something up. I'm trying to finish out just a quick discussion of my visit to Adana. I had just a couple of other notes, and we'll pick up where we left off. One thing was a really beautiful looking, if you looked to the right, if you're on the riverside of the hotel, the Hilton in Adana, to the right is the mosque. To the left, a really interesting looking Roman footbridge. It was really intriguing to me because it said that in 2007 was when they had finally shut down the use of the bridge for vehicular traffic. I thought that was pretty amazing. They're like, the cars were going over it and they were shaking the bridge and causing a bunch of damage. There was all these, rocks popping loose and all this kind of, hey, yeah, really? What do you expect? But 2007, apparently, a very recent development where they shut down traffic on the bridge. I looked up some information on the bridge. Of course, I won't go into a whole thing about how one set of notes was saved on one computer and another set of notes on, well, whatever. Another epic fail. Welcome back to the Epic Fail radio show. But the bridge was apparently built during the Hittite Empire, which puts it somewhere deep into 1500 BC or somewhere in that ballpark. But because the first written record of the bridge is under the Roman Empire, that's what the official word is. Oh, well, it was built in 500 or 600, AD. Forget the discrepancy about the Hittite Empire actually mentioning who the guy was that built it, but some discrepancy there. And it's interesting that the archaeological record continues to just turn on its head with all these little finds. The other thing, I've made a stop everywhere I've gone at Toyota dealerships to try to get stickers and different things from the dealerships. I tried to stop at the one in Adana and got a nice glass of juice and, a warm welcome to the dealership. But after the gentleman that I was with managed to translate the conversation, it turned out that they had moved to the dealership and lost the box where they had all of their stickers from Toyota that had their dealership names on them, and since they had moved in the new building, they had not been able to...
So they could just be floating around anywhere, pretty much.
It was pretty much the explanation that we got. So I came away from Adana without an actual Toyota sticker. I did get a nice Toyota lanyard as well as a keychain, but not the sticker that I was looking for. I thought that was pretty funny, because I've mentioned that in a couple of previous episodes, so I thought I'd throw that in. And my last note on Adana was that I acquired my first set of Suba beads. I thought this was pretty interesting. I had a great conversation with a local gentleman there who actually took me to a store and bought me a set, or I should say I purchased them myself, but he directed me to a set of prayer beads, Muslim prayer beads that have 99 beads on them. They're sort of like the rosary as far as Christians is about the closest thing you could come up with. Christians have rosaries have, 45 beads on them or some
I believe that.
I should probably know the answer to that.
Dude, we should all know the answer.
We should all know the answer to
didn't
that.
go to Catholic school.
But the Suba beads that I got had 3 sets of 33 all on one chain. The other thing that was very interesting was that the guy kept saying to me, it's not a relic, it's not something that you sit there and you're not actually praying to it. It's just a tool to actually remind you, and you work your way through this thing where you think about the 99 forms of God or names of God or whatever. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing to get. But finally got a set of those. I had seen a lot of people with those in some of the Muslim countries I've been to. Anyway, so now we get into the real good epic fail portion of the show, because this was my trip to Istanbul, Turkey. I'd like to just say, first of all, Istanbul, also known as Constantinople for all you art history major students. That's right, one of the art history students, graduates, degree holders, that she seemed to struggle. Every time I mentioned Istanbul, she went, Constantinople? Constantinople was renamed Istanbul in 1453. So I don't really care how many history books you've read, but you might want to... Anyone?
Is that near Burma? Oh, that's right. That's not called Burma either, and that's been like 20 years.
Istanbul.
So, I mean, can we move on with the names of places? I don't
believe
tell people I'm from Hibernia. My family's not from Hibernia. We're Irish, dude.
I thought Constantinople was from the Greek Empire moving towards...
It's the Byzantines.
The Byzantines, excuse me. Moving towards and then taking over the capital of Constantinople.
Constantinople was built by the Eastern Greek Empire, right? The Byzantines.
Roman Empire.
Well, right, but they were splitting at that point.
They were splitting at that point.
The Romans may have begun the city, the Byzantines finished the city and expanded it.
Correct.
At some point, it went from being a pagan city to a Christian city.
Correct.
To an Islamic city.
Correct. And
one of the few major cities in the world that's ever seen that kind of progression.
And that's where the conflict began, because it was between the Christians and the Jews. And they were trying to figure out, which side. They were trying to convert the poorer people towards the Christians, and if you were Jewish, then you had to basically get out of the city.
Is that not where Peter was crucified upside down?
That's
right outside of Constantinople?
Entirely possible.
I believe that it was Peter, right? Or was it?
Well, I have a couple of notes, but this isn't going to actually answer that question directly. But it would have been really early on. Istanbul, the only city in the world, by the way, situated on 2 continents, and you had another footnote about that. There was, you were asking about Easter Island before.
I was just talking about Easter Island.
We'll get back to that in a minute. Yeah,
continents, but not the same.
Istanbul, part of it in Europe, and the other part on the opposite side of the Bosporus Strait, on the Asia side, which is really it's very interesting to sit there and drive up and take a look at that. So anyway,
that's where the legend of the Gordian knot's from. Correct?
That's correct.
Excellent Iron Maiden song. If you don't know anything about that, look that up. Iron Maiden, Gordian's Knot, you will find a good song.
The notes that I have on Istanbul say that it served as the capital of the Roman Empire from 330 to 395, the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire from 2 sets of dates, 395 to 1204 and 1261 to 1453. So, interesting that there's a split in there. The Latin Empire, 1204 to 1261, to kind of fill in the gap. And the Ottoman Empire, 1453 to, wait for it, 1922.
Wow.
That's right, the Ottoman Empire is still around at the end of World War I.
Wow.
When the new Republic of Turkey was proclaimed in 1923, Ankara was actually chosen as its capital. That's apparently a fun question Turks love to ask, is what is the capital of Turkey? And of course most people want to blurt out Istanbul. That is incorrect. The answer to that question is Ankara. So I go to Istanbul. I have to fly in and out of Istanbul a couple different times. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I haven't really had a chance to go to this incredibly famous city and see anything there. And I've got a couple little connections of stuff that I've done in the past. I really want to go check this place out. So I pick, of the 4 flights that I had on my itinerary, the second one left me about a 6-hour window from wheels down to wheels back up to get back out of the airport to maybe think about jumping in a taxi and shooting downtown and going to see some of the little sights down there, right? So I'm like, you know what? How many times am I going to be in Istanbul? I'm going to have to probably try this. Great. So I get there, and I jump in a taxi, and I'm looking at my watch, and I'm watching the time, and I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to go check out here? I got to go see this. And I'm watching as I go up the highway from the airport. You got the Bosporus Strait right there. It's just loaded with ships, and I mean, just these huge freighters and tankers, everything going in and out of the Black Sea. They say it's one of the busiest ports, busiest waterways in the entire world. Really incredible stuff.
It's up there with the Malacca Straits.
You got the Golden Horn as you're coming around, right? The Golden Horn, the famous Golden Horn, where all these invasions had taken place and people are trying to control. Right, that's really just amazing. As far as architecture, you can't get any better. You got the Hagia Sophia down there, this incredible construction by the Roman Emperor Justinian. Still stands today as they call it a mosque, but that's kind of a misnomer. It was converted into a Muslim prayer area, but it wasn't built as a mosque. It was built as sort of a church slash
technically one
palace.
of the seven ancient wonders.
It was at one time, yes, considered. Okay. The dome in particular is more than 180 feet off the floor. This one single piece dome that sits there suspended by these huge pillars. Really an incredible thing. And then the Topkapi Palace, I have to mention also, Tim, you may remember, without going into a bunch of work stuff, you may remember early on in my days doing some of my earlier work, I did an exhibition down at the Corcoran Art Gallery as a technician, and it was the treasures from Topkapi Palace were actually there in the building. So, I mean, really, it was very exciting for me to get a chance to go there, right? So I get in this taxi and I head out of the airport, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take off. It's about a 30-minute one-way ride. I've got this window of time. I got to really pay attention. You know, you say 5 hours, 6 hours between landing and takeoff, but realistically, that only translates to 2 hours of time. I mean, I've got to get all the way off my domestic flight into the taxi, all the way downtown, have some time, and then know that I have to take a taxi back, and then go through immigration and all this other stuff, right? Well, okay, first epic fail point, not picking a good day. It's a Turkish national holiday, Sovereignty and Children's Day in Turkey. One of their biggest holidays, national holidays of the entire year. The entire riverfront and highways are jammed with people. There are people on every square foot of grass you can see along the riverfront doing cookouts and having family gatherings. I mean, thousands and thousands of people out there. So already I'm in trouble. I'm heading down there and I'm like, this is not going to work out very well. So this taxi driver that I have, he runs me right up next to the Topkapi Palace through some back little roads and everything, and he's got me right up there in the midst of everything, right where I want to be, and he just parks the car and he looks at me, he's like, okay, you can get out here. I can't even believe this guy was able to drive this close up to the entrances to these places, but sure enough, he jams his car up there. So I'm like, okay.
What would you like consider that to be over here in America, like 4th of July?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. No question about it. I'm sure once the sun went down, too. I mean, I was out of the city by then, but once the sun went down, I'm sure the fireworks are going in the whole,
Can you actually cook baklava and yogurt on a grill? I mean, what did they cook?
I don't know if
what was the big meat?
Kebabs.
Do you know?
Kebab, yeah, lamb.
You know what?
Lamb,
Obviously.
chicken. You know, a little bit of beef, maybe if you if you can get it and stuff. But yeah, they're just cooking.
I'll tell you what, that would have been some food.
Onions,
that sounds
onions
delicious.
and tomatoes.
That sounds delicious.
I'm some crazy dude from America.
Absolutely.
Let me taste your kebabs.
Oh, the smell.
You could get a great sample.
This is not some country where I would complain about the smell. I mean, it's all like cookout food, man. You just you feel like you pulled up into a stadium before
any
a
culture
game
that revolves around the grill is a culture for me.
It was fantastic. So I jump out of the taxi and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got this background. I've done this thing with the Topkapi Palace. I'm standing 10 feet from the wall. I can walk right over and touch the Topkapi Palace after all these years. There's the Hagia Sophia's right off to my left, and Justinian and the granite pillars coming from Lebanon and all this history and stuff that I've read about. And I reach into my bag. I've got my little carry-on with me, which we'll talk about more in a second. And I take out my video camera, the same one that's videotaping us right now, and I hit the button to turn it on and start doing a recording. Dead battery.
Dagger.
All the time that I'd spent writing notes and doing stuff and loading up and getting all my equipment and all that, that is the worst media fail I think I've ever committed. Dead battery.
No, that's pretty bad. Now, you do know that most of these tourist locations, at least in the States now, you can run into a place and buy one of those emergency battery charger. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I was in Turkey.
Okay.
There's not a Best
I'm
Buy
tracking with you. Okay. All right.
in Istanbul.
Right.
There's not a little kiosk available that you could just run into and
I mean,
pick up a local.
Oh man! So I mean, what a major letdown.
All this time you spent overseas, you haven't fished in any of these countries?
No, as a matter of fact, I did do a little bit of fishing. I did
Germany,
some fishing.
right?
I tried in Riga, in Latvia, and I was actually going to try in Asuncion in Paraguay. But when I asked about it, the guy said, "Yeah, sure, you can go fish if you want to catch a couch." Or like a washing machine.
Really?
Or something like that.
I'm just thinking that, like, I've never had the chance to fish in the Mediterranean.
So, no, and actually that was the funny thing about Adana in particular. Adana not exactly on the Mediterranean coast, and Istanbul is up away from the Mediterranean where it breaks through to the
But
the
it's
Black
still
Sea,
being fed by the same water.
Yeah,
it's still Mediterranean climate.
And it's still
you're going to have similar fish. They are connected.
Absolutely.
I'm sure they probably got some pretty interesting species over there.
Oh,
Like-
some crazy catfish. There's catfish
Species-
everywhere, dude.
Species of fish that we've just never even seen.
Dude, there's
over
catfish
here.
that could eat anything. All you gotta do is watch that show, Monster River
Monster,
Fish. or whatever.
yeah.
The guy, the Welsh catfish, eats
Yeah.
the small child, and
Yeah.
47 years later, they kill the catfish and cut it open, and there's like a full-grown man inside.
Exactly.
A
Like
child
half a
grew
cow
up.
inside of it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I epic fail with the battery and the camera. And okay, so
Well, you live and you learn.
Yeah.
You know,
I-
next time over, bring multiple backups.
I guess. I mean, that was the thing too. I bought an extra capacity battery for that particular camera, and I don't know. I just forgot to charge the stupid thing. It was really just such an epic fail.
Of course, I would be afraid that if you brought multiple backups of like batteries, they might consider it like a bomb
Well, here
preparation.
is
This
type
would be
device.
funny you would say that.
You need to get one of yourself, one of those iPad things, dude.
So here's the
Record,
thing.
right?
Here's the thing. Let's move to stage 2 of the Epic Fail Radio Show. This is timeandspace.us. I'm your host, Mike Smith, and I'm chilling at the shed here with Executive Chef Mike Fay and the commander of our Interstate Space Station, TK. We're talking about my little visit to Istanbul, and yeah, that was the thing. I got out of the taxi, and I realized with all the planning and thought that I thought I had put into it, and this is already after the point where I've immediately dug into my carry-on and pulled out this camera and popped this thing on, right?
Right.
I realized that the carry-on that I'm using is a small carry-on size. It's specifically sized for this, but it's a small black plastic Model 1510 Pelican case. It's one of these little hard plastic cases, right? Now, this wouldn't seem to be such a big deal, except that all of a sudden I'm up smack in the middle of the city of Istanbul at some of their most sensitive sites, their Topkapi Palace, the Hagia Sophia.
Sure.
There's cops everywhere, there's military everywhere, there's people all over the place, security's all over the place, and especially on a holiday like this, right? And here I am, jumping out of a cab with this Pelican case. This black plastic case. It didn't even occur to me till after I switched the camera off. Not that I had to do that because the damn battery was dead. I'm looking at the camera like, oh my God, I can't believe I finally travel all this way. I come to this place and I'm sitting here looking at it. I can't record a damn thing. Now I realize, I got these cops all over the place. I got this security all over the place, and I'm this idiot walking around with a black Pelican case. What? Somebody's definitely going to stop me and start wanting to go through this thing, right? And try to figure out, who's this guy with.
Of course, not to racial profile, but I'm sure you're probably one of a handful of people that are 6'4" and blonde.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
I mean,
so I don't know quite what to do, and I think to myself, well, nobody immediately came over to me. Nobody immediately came over and said anything. I'm just going to start walking around. Well, that was kind of the funny thing. I walked all the way down the east side of the Hagia Sophia, and then I went around the main plaza, and I'm kind of picking my way through the crowd, and I stop at a kiosk, and I buy some postcards. Nobody says anything. I walk all the way back around the other side, the west side of the Hagia Sophia, up this little street, and people looking at me, but nobody saying anything. So I'm like, well, okay, I guess it's not that big of a deal. I don't know, whatever. And I walk back around. I'm kind of watching the clock, and I'm like, I'm going to have to find another taxi, jump back in, and head back to. And I get back around to the sort of the same area where I had been dropped off, and sure enough, there's still these cops standing there and military guys with the rifles and the whole thing. Not one person looking at me, and I'm still thinking about it, and I'm starting to think, where can I find a taxi? And all of a sudden, some guy just walks up to me. He starts walking along with me. Just 2-3 steps, it happens very quickly. And I realize that the guy's there, and he's now walking stride for stride with me, and I pick my head up and I look at him, and he looks back at me, and he points right at the Pelican case. He goes, "Bomb?"
Oh, no.
I'm like...
Were you totally, fear that you were going to be thrown in a Turkish prison?
I didn't know what to think, but I just laughed, and I looked at the guy, and I went, "No." And he went, "Okay," and shrugged his shoulders and just walked away. And just laughed. And I looked back over my shoulder at all the military guys and everything. They're not even paying any attention to me. So I just headed right down the hill away from the place, and I was like, you know what? I finally got to set foot up here. I touched the walls. I looked at all this with my own eyes, and what better can I do except maybe record it for the fans of the radio show? And I found the next taxi I could get in and jumped right in. So there I am, as far as I'm concerned, epic fail with my own camera. Epic fail on my part, again, to be walking around with a Pelican case in a huge tourist area in a Muslim country. Probably not the best thing I could have done. Epic fail by the security folks, though. Nobody coming by and saying a word to me about it, except for whoever the passerby may have been. I don't know that guy was anything but just some other tourist that was trying to walk by. So anyway, I get back in another taxi, and I head back to the airport. And I get to the airport, and I have 20 lira and 50 lira right there, or Turkish lira in my hand. And I turn to the driver. The ride on the way over had been like 40 or something, and I gave the guy a 50, and I got a 50 and a 20 in my hand. I wasn't sure, was it going to be different? And I hand him the 50 and the 20, and I said, "Can I get a receipt?" And I look down at my bag, and I start fussing with everything, and I'm like, okay, that's the last of my Turkish lira, and I got all my everything. And he leans back over the seat, and he looks at me, and he goes, "You just gave me 20.
Oh, no.
And I said, "No, I'm sure I gave you a 50 and he fusses with it real quick, and he flips it open, and he's like, "No, it's a 20 and a 5 you gave me." I'm like, "No, dude, I know I gave you a 50. I have no other money with me. There's nothing else I can do." And sure enough, we sat there and argued about it for like the next 5 minutes, and then finally he just stopped and stuck his hand over the back seat. He's like, "Yeah, it's okay, man. It's good. It's good. Go ahead, get out of my cab." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, fine. Well, I'm sure I gave you a 50, man. I'm really sorry about that. I'm out of here." And he gave me a receipt and everything. And just, that was the end of it. So,
wow.
Whatever the case, anyway.
Well, as soon as he found out it was going to be an expense account, he wanted another 50. He would have written you a receipt for 120.
I guess.
Bingo.
I don't know.
And he could have pocketed his, and you could have pocketed yours.
I
Bingo.
don't know. So,
I'm telling you, dude, people are bad.
They
find out about expense accounts, and they do weird things.
It was a very strange visit. It was fun to actually get to go, but I don't know. I just I was happy to get to see everything, but I felt like it was just a big epic fail on my part as far as some of that stuff went. And
I thought you handled yourself very well.
Well, I managed to get out of there in one piece, and I turned around and actually made another visit. You
didn't end up in a Turkish prison. That was a good.
I didn't end up in a Turkish prison.
And remember the airline. We got you there alive.
We got you there,
you
in just one piece. That's great. So, anyway, this is timeandspaceus. I'm very excited to be back at the shed in Damascus, Maryland. I'm sitting here with TK, the commander of the Interstate Space Station, and our executive chef, Mike Fay. We're going to talk a little bit more about Turkey and Gobekli Tepe in the upcoming segments, and a few other things about the show that we want to explain as far as what's going to be going on, on the future episodes. We've got a couple things coming up that are pretty interesting. We're going to do another episode sort of like this one about Mumbai and my visits, multiple visits there. I had sort of done an intro piece, and some of you may have heard this really great interview with Grant Cameron. But on the return visit, I tried to check out a couple things that I didn't have a chance to see the first time that I was there, and I'm very excited to have a chance to kind of go over some of those. We've also got some really great interviews lined up. We're going to be talking to Alice Von Cannon about Freemasonry and this whole Masons thing that I've been trying to do. I'm looking forward to that. Did you get the book from Mac Maloney? You were supposed to.
You know what? I did, and I believe It came in like 2 days.
It did.
Really fast, and it was just in an envelope, and he actually put in a note. He's like, I apologize for the unprofessionalism or whatever. It's like, dude, you got me a book in 2 days. I don't care what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
You
right.
Put it in a lunch bag and tape it closed with a, Hello Kitty sticker and put postage on it, and I'd be happy to get it. So
well, when you have a chance to rip through it, I definitely
not had a chance to do. You know what? I'll admit it. I flipped in the middle and looked at the pictures. It's the only thing I've had time to do.
I read it on my Kindle. I didn't even bother to look at the hard copy. Actually, my son is reading it. My son is reading the hard copy. Yeah, no, exactly. Anyway, we're going to be interviewing Mac Maloney. The book is called UFOs in Wartime, and you're definitely going to want to check that out, especially the sections on the Middle East, on the Persian Gulf War, and the more recent Gulf-Iraq War, as well as some of the stuff with ICBMs and the UFOs messing with missile silos and all that kind of stuff. Really great material in that book. We also have Richard Dolan. I'm also hoping Bryce Zabel is going to be able to come on the show. Those guys have been working together on a couple different projects, and I'm looking forward to some of that stuff. So anyway, that's all going to be upcoming. Again, we're going to be talking about Gobekli Tepe and a couple of the other final notes on Turkey here in our second hour, if you will, of this particular show. We're recording live at the Shed. This is timeandspace.us. Once again, TK, I just want to say welcome back to the show. It's good to have you in the mix. I know you haven't been, kind of chipping in as we've been moving along.
It's good to be back in the Shed.
But,
be back in the mix.
I'm looking forward to having you on the show for a few other segments. As I had mentioned to you a few minutes ago, too, I thought it was funny. Faye was actually considering interviewing you later in the show.
That's right.
Do you mind being on the hot seat in the no-spin zone? Can you handle that?
It depends on how political Faye gets.
Is this going to be ambush journalism, Faye, or are you going to just...
I don't think I'll do any ambush journalism. I'd actually just like to ask a few leading questions.
I know.
And let you go with them from there.
I'm certainly not as politically savvy as you two are, but I do like to think that I venture around the various major networks and try to keep apprised of the situation. However, I will forewarn you, because of the latest move from the Virginia Commonwealth.
Yeah, you're out of the loop.
I've been sort of out of the loop for the last week or so without any internet so there's my disclaimer for the whole potential interview.
Would you like me to summarize the last week for you real quick, last 2 weeks?
Sure.
Rich people bad. Poor people need rich people money. Rich people bad.
I'm telling you.
That's really about it. Now, unfortunately, what they don't realize is if they take all the money from the rich people and give it all to the poor people, then there's no rich people left to take the money from. Are you going to Greece anytime soon there?
Not that I know of.
Okay, because they're about to get rid of the euro. That pretty much just summarized the last week or two. Like, they're going to get rid of the euro any day, probably.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, and that's going to be
That's probably not going to be a good...
That's not going to be good.
Not going to be a good situation.
So it's all bad economic news. There's nothing really different happening.
As long as you don't get into like authors and things like that with me, then I'm I'm not like I said, I'm not as well read as you guys are.
It wasn't that type of interview.
Okay.
All right, let's just cut this segment off. I'm going to do the little the music out. Didn't actually, we didn't time that very well, so it's all good. I'll do the
We're going to run for the hills because the Mac is back.
I'll do the John Wayne riff.
Monster has no... Monster loves to get...
You can fill in the blanks from there.
Thank you.
Monster doesn't what? Oh, Monster, yeah.
Has no...
Morals?
Monster loves to get...
Morals?
Morals.
Nice.
Floral arrangements?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Timeandspace.us.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about.